Hi, friends. Chelsea here, and today we're bringing you one of our most popular episodes. In fact, this was the third episode we ever published. This conversation is all about whether getting a BFA degree in musical theater is actually worth it, and we dive deep into the pros and cons we want you to consider if you're thinking about pursuing this. Spoiler alert, making a decision like this is totally personal, and many factors will play into your decision. But there are a handful of considerations we see a lot of students and their parents ignore, so this episode is here to shed some light on them. And coming up, if you are a high school student or the parent of one, you are going to want to be at our free masterclass all about how to get started with the college musical theater audition process. Sunday, March 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's all happening live on Zoom. Yes, there will be a recording if you can't make it live, and the class is totally free, but you've got to register to save your spot. We'll be discussing what to expect from the audition and application process, the timeline we suggest to get it all done in time. Plus, we've got the inside scoop on what schools are actually looking for and how you can show up as your best self. Everyone registered for the event will get exclusive first access to a brand new resource we've been working on for you because you should not have to go through this alone. The link is in the episode description. Make sure you are registered for our free masterclass on how to start the college musical theater audition process on Sunday, March 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And now let's get into the episode. This is what I said I was going to do. This is the only way to be, quote, successful. And it's just not true. It is just not true. There are so many other ways to be successful and find success. And if you can go into a degree program with that in mind, I think you're setting yourself up for so much more peace of mind, whatever that looks like to you.
Young musical theater performers are faced with a huge decision early in their lives. Should I go to school for musical theater or not? This decision impacts their careers, their prospects, their finances, and their family. But few young artists think through the implications of pursuing a BFA in musical theater. And we get it. It is overwhelming, which is why today we are sharing the pros and cons of getting a BFA in musical theater. I'm Cynthia Cortman-Westphal. I'm a tenured faculty member at the University of Michigan's Department of Musical Theater, and I am also a music director and a vocal coach.
And I'm Chelsea Wilson, a musical theater BFA graduate from the University of Michigan, as well as a voice teacher and voice coach.
And welcome to the Broadway Vocal Coach Podcast. We are in a really unique position to talk about this topic. So not only am I a faculty member at a BFA program, but Chelsea, you were once my student at the school, and now we are partners talking about BFA training on our podcast.
Well, look at that. I wouldn't have thought.
You just never know where life's going to take you.
Oh, truly. You truly don't.
So this is a little bit of a loaded question. Here we go. Chelsea, you are 10 years out. Wow, 10 years out from graduating with your BFA. From your vantage point, was getting your BFA worth it?
You're right. That is a loaded question. So I might not answer it entirely directly right to start. I want to share a little bit more about my story, but you're right. I graduated with my BFA in musical theater 10 years ago in 2012, which I feel like is now enough time to look back at that with some more pragmatic hindsight. Because when I graduated, I was sure that within a few years, like 3 years at most, I would be performing on Broadway in a Broadway musical. Well, spoiler alert, I was not performing on Broadway within 3 years, or honestly, any number of years. I have never performed on a Broadway stage. And so my post-college career has turned out very different than I originally thought. And for that, I'm ultimately very grateful for. I'm very pleased with where life and my career has taken me, not without its challenges, which we'll chat about, I'm sure. But in around 2015, around 3 years after I graduated and moved to New York City, I decided to stop auditioning. I decided to turn all my focus and my efforts into building my vocal studio. When I moved to the city, well, actually, well before that, I was teaching voice lessons and pursuing my vocal education and certification kind of privately and concurrently while I was in school. And so I moved to the city and was teaching, and that was kind of how I was supporting myself. And turns out I loved that, loved teaching, found so much joy in that, a lot of fulfillment and self direction, I was in charge of my job and my career, and I really liked that. So I turned all my attention to that. and fully committed to doing that around that time.
I love that your career just took a completely different path than what you expected. So, what did that feel like to pivot in that way? Did that feel like a disappointment? Did it feel like a failure? Did it feel like an empowered choice?
Whew, it was a really scary decision.
All the above?
All of the above. All of the above. It was a really scary decision. And to be honest, I felt a little embarrassed of it at the time. Because after all, I was supposed to be on Broadway, not teaching voice lesson. I was supposed to be performing on Broadway. I viewed this as kind of giving up on my dream. That's what it felt like. And, I graduated from a fancy program. Michigan's a big program and there's a lot of grads on Broadway. And I saw that for myself. And so it felt a little embarrassing to admit that I was going to pursue something different. Long story short, in 2017, I made my Broadway debut with School of Rock as the associate vocal coach.
So cool.
And wow, that was amazing. So seeing my name even in small print in the back of that Broadway playbill was truly thrilling to me. It was never what I imagined my quote Broadway debut to be, but it was nonetheless satisfying and a total dream come true. And it was just under completely different circumstances than 18-year-old or 22-year-old me could have thought.
And when you really think about it, sometimes, there can be like 50 actors in a show, but you're only going to see maybe one, maybe two names in the back there in that program that say vocal coach or voice teacher for this cat. I mean,
That's true.
For those of you who don't know, that's a really big deal. Really big deal. I remember when that happened for you, and I was back here going, woot, woot, woot. I was so proud of you. I thought that was so cool. So at this point, you're now using your musical theater expertise in a totally different way, obviously, than you originally imagined. So now let's get back to that question. Was the BFA worth it, do you think?
That is a great question. After graduating college, I did some professional performing when it comes to the performance aspect of my degree. But for the most part, my time was spent investing in my teaching career. So yes, was that musical theater performance degree worth it? Worth all of the money and the time and the effort it took to get? I'm only going to answer this for myself, but we'll also put forward some pros and cons if you're thinking about getting a musical theater BFA. For me, my degree was totally worth it. Totally worth it, and for a number of reasons. It's something my parents have asked me a lot in the last 10 years too. Like, was it worth it? Like, what do you think? It was worth it for a number of reasons. Number one, the scope of my training at school has proven useful to me every day. I am a musical theater expert. I use that expertise and even my performance experience as a teacher, as a coach. I feel very empathetic towards my students. I understand the demands that is placed on them. And that BFA training really prepared me for my line of work. It really did. Secondly, my performance training allows me to speak confidently. Here I am speaking confidently on this podcast. It allows me to present ideas and information with clarity. I've actually had a number of roles and jobs through my teaching where I've been kind of a spokesperson, or people look to me to teach the classes. People want me to be the voice or the face of something because I have that confidence and just frankly that training to be able to do that. And that's an important aspect of my work. And then thirdly, and I think this is crucial, the people that I met in college are my best friends, they're my colleagues, and they're now my business partner. I literally wouldn't be where I am right now without the relationships that I formed in college. It's a really special experience to study and train with the same 20 or so classmates for 4 years. And of course, the faculty and the professional relationships that I made there are so impactful. I wouldn't trade my time with those people for anything. And actually, as just a funny side note, when it comes to relationships, this is very much not the norm. Don't expect this, but 2 couples in my class of 20, I think there were 24 of us, 2 couples got married after graduation. So that's just my experience. That's just a little taste of what I got out of my BFA experience, and I could wax poetic about that for an eternity. But let's get to the heart of the matter, which is, what should our listeners, if they're young people considering going to college, going to school for musical theater, what should they consider if they're making that decision to go for a degree or not? Anything else you want to add before we dive into these pros and cons? What do you think?
I want to dive into the pros and cons, and maybe not even frame it as a pro and a con, but just they're 2 different paths. Getting a BFA is one path. Not getting a BFA will be a different path. depending on who you are and what you need,
Yeah.
they're both really viable paths.
Let's get into it. Okay.
All right. We'll start with some reasons why it might make sense for you to get a BFA. Number one, on pretty obviously, is the training. If you're in a program, a BFA program, it's going to be hopefully a really rigorous, structured 4-year degree program, and you are hopefully going to emerge from that with specialized singing, acting, dance training. And these programs are designed for a 4-year trajectory. So you're going to build your skills year after year and hopefully be set up for professional success when you get out of school.
Yeah, it's a really compact way to get a lot of training, a lot of experience in a 4-year time period.
And I would add a lot of BFAs now also have what's called a senior showcase, which is sort of an introduction to the industry when you get out of school. So that's something you might look for when you're looking for BFAs. A senior showcase would be something that you would get to sing for, or maybe do a monologue for industry casting directors, agents, managers, and it's just a way to be introduced to the business.
That's really worth it.
It's a huge boost. It's a really big boost for sure.
Yeah, it definitely can be. Training for number one. A second point here is interpersonal life skills. Like I was saying before, a degree in musical theater helps build confidence, self-awareness. Students become skilled at collaboration, public speaking, organization, critical thinking, discipline. I mean, it's not just singing and dancing well. It is you through those avenues, you learn how to conduct yourself in a way that makes you really well equipped to speak professionally, handle yourself well in whole sorts of situations. I've certainly found that to be true for me.
Yeah. I have a great example of there was a student who graduated, worked in musical theater for a little while, and then decided they wanted to do something different. And they went back and got a law degree. And when it came time to clerk, oftentimes then you want to like clerk for a judge and get your foot in the door that way, that they interviewed, apparently hundreds of people interviewed to be a clerk for this particular judge. And the judge, when they saw that this person had a musical theater degree, said, I love musical theater. If you've got a musical theater degree, I know that you're going to have the skills I need. And it was literally these skills. It was like collaboration, public speaking, organization, critical thinking, discipline, empathy. And he totally got that job based on this judge loving that he had the musical theater degree.
That's fascinating.
I do think those skills, I can't really think of any other major where you kind of get all of those things in one place.
I don't know. Not in the same way. I mean,
not in the same way.
But performance degrees are special in that regard, I think.
Which brings us to diverse career options.
This is so important. This one's so important.
Yeah. With the degree in musical theater, obviously you will be able to do things like act and sing and dance, but there are so many other things you can do, which I know a lot of people wish they had realized sooner than later. Not only can we talked about a minute ago this person who ended up becoming a lawyer and clerking for this judge, but of course in the industry there's so much more. Chelsea went on to become a voice teacher. You can also go on to become a producer, a performing arts teacher in many different areas, many different ages, different venues. You could become a designer, a casting director. You could go into tech support, backstage, directors, music directors, choreographers, composers, writers, dramaturgs, company managers, public speakers, digital media experts. That's just within our business. Then when you get out of this business, think of how many things you will be qualified to do. I've got former students who are now psychologists, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're engineers, they're physicists, they're teachers of other things other than musical theater, because they've got this huge array of skills. So it's still a college degree, and it brings with it, I think, a lot of other skills that other majors don't necessarily teach. So it's kind of an interesting thing, even if you don't end up going into musical theater.
And I think that's an important perspective to have going into your degree program. If you choose to go this route and get a BFA, a performance degree, go into it with the thought that it might be more than what you thought originally. Yes, maybe you'll perform, and maybe you'll perform professionally for a really long time, and you might also be involved in the field in these other ways. And I think we're talking about that more and more now, whereas I don't feel like I heard that messaging very much as a young person. Or maybe if I did, I was just like, nope, Broadway for me. I can't even hear it right now. But that's what made it so, my perception of my career change
Right, right.
felt so embarrassing because I was like, everyone's gonna be disappointed in me. This is what I said I was gonna do. Like, this is the only way to be, quote, successful. And it's just not true. It is just not true. There are so many other ways to be successful and find success. And if you can go into a degree program with that in mind, I think you're setting yourself up for so much more peace of mind and success, whatever that looks like to you. You're going to make a successful career, a successful choice, even if it looks a little different than what maybe you thought when you were 17 or 18 years old.
I completely agree. I remember Justin Paul standing in my office one day saying, I just don't know what to do. I just don't know. It was right before he was graduating. And he's a beautiful singer, great actor, obviously a composer, music director. At the time, he's a brilliant pianist and great we were learning that he was quite a composer as well. And I remember him standing in my office one day and just being really kind of down, and I just don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I mean, I don't know if I should go into acting. I don't know if I should go into music directing. I don't know if.
Wow.
And, look at him now, an Oscar
Yeah.
later, a Tony later. I mean, but even for someone like him, he went in, I'm sure, thinking he was going to be a performer, and then composition. He met his writing partner in college, and they went on a completely different journey than what was expected. So yeah, having that
Open-mindedness.
possibility, open-mindedness to be open to different possibilities, I think is really exciting in this field, because there are so many different ways you can work in the field.
A fourth thing that we think is a real a positive aspect of getting a BFA is discourse and dialogue. Theater really demands that we see different perspectives than our own, and theater allows us to consider the humanity, the psychology, and the motivations of others. And I think as theater professionals, we become better at discussing difficult topics from a point of empathy and understanding, and we can learn how to manage conflict and resolution. And I think we need a lot more of that in today's day and age, and being able to have those difficult conversations with empathy and kindness and understanding of where other people are coming from. It's really valuable. Again, that's a really unique thing about being an artist.
Yeah, no, so much of the work that you do just working on characters is you think, well, I would never do what that character's doing. So you have to get into, you can't judge that character. You have to really think, okay, there's a reason why they're doing what they're doing. Why are they doing that? Why are they acting like that? Why did they treat that person that way? And to get in this place of no judgment, let me just observe what's happening so that I can then embody that character without bringing my own judgment to it. I think that plays out in your real life, and you can start to think empathetically in your real life as well, that maybe you bring a little less judgment, you bring a little more understanding, you work a little harder to figure out why someone might be doing the thing they're doing, and you learn to have conversations about it. I mean, some of the conversations we have in our classes about characters and understanding why they do what they do and what types of people they are and how they interact and how they resolve conflict plays out in real life as well. It's just such a huge skill to learn.
I think a fifth thing, the last on our list of pros, of which I'm sure there are so many more pros. This is just our list. I can't wait to hear what our listeners think are
Yes, of course.
Some more pros and cons. This last one we have is relationships, which is a big one. I mean, like I said, you might go and meet your future life partner in your BFA program, so you probably should go get a BFA for that reason. No, I'm just kidding. But relationships in a kind of a macro and a micro sense, this feeling of, studying musical theater in college allows you to develop relationships in ways that you don't even know how it might benefit you in the future. And I don't mean that in like a cringy, like you're trying to get something out of all of these relationships. It's just it's just this idea of like, you literally never know how you will cross paths with these people again, who's going to end up doing what. They're going to think of you for this job. They're going to remember you for that. I mean, yours and my story, Cynthia, is this exactly. I never could have imagined that one day my former college professor would call me up and be like, hey, I have an idea for a business. I want to run it past you. And I'd be like, who, me? Sure. Yeah, of course, please. I think it's an easy way to find, quote, your people as well, especially if you're coming from maybe a high school environment where like you're the one kid in your town who loves musical theater. We've yeah, you can go to school and find your people and realize, oh, I'm not the only one who
Yeah.
loves this or is talented in this or wants to pursue this. And it's really likely that your paths will cross again with these folks. These relationships will last professionally and personally far beyond your college years. The relationship aspect is so important in this business, don't you think, Cynthia?
I do. Oh, it's huge. It's just huge. And like you just said, you just never know when those connections are
Mm-hmm.
going to spark. It could be 10 years down the line, it could be 15 years down the line, it could be 1 year down the line. You just don't know. I mean, we have someone right now who graduated 2 years ago who's a Tony winning producer, 2 years out of college. He's now producing shows that other graduates are in. We have people who are casting directors who are casting former graduates. We've just talked about Justin and Benj, who met each other in college and became
Oh, yeah.
the Oscar winning writing team that they are. You just never know.
No,
And we, of course, talked about the ones who got married. You just never know what's going to happen. And it's just such a great way to make those connections with people are your people who love the same thing
yeah.
that you do and are
Yeah,
invested in
totally.
it the way you are.
I think that's a great list of pros. Let's turn the topic to what are some reasons you might choose a different path?
Yeah, here's a big one. Dun, dun, dun. Student loan debt. This is a big one. And I'm really glad we're talking about this because, in all honesty, it's a big one. And obviously, this isn't something that only musical theater majors need to think about. But I would say performing artists might need to more carefully consider what are the immediate professional opportunities that are going to be there for them after school. Are you going to need to take out student loans to cover your tuition? Will you need financial support from your family or loans or grants or work study to cover your living expenses in school? And then what about after graduating? You don't just land an entry-level job in the theater the minute you graduate like you might in some other majors. So getting started in the theater industry can take time and patience. And it is the exception, not the rule, to book Broadway and take home a production contract paycheck right after graduating. It does happen sometimes. We all know those people that it has happened to, but that's the exception. It's not the rule. So you really do need to think about how you're going to support yourself financially after graduating while still trying to be able to attend auditions and be paying back those loans.
It is. It's a really big thing to factor in. And something I like that you said is you've got to consider what the immediate professional opportunities will be and how you'll support yourself in those first weeks, months, years as you're getting your career going. And we've spoken about this in another episode, this idea of finding other things that fill your cup, finding other things that support you financially, support you mentally, physically, so that you can pursue this. The financial implications of a 4-year degree is not to be dismissed. It's a heavy burden to bear if you're paying all of that out of pocket. And even with some help, it's still an expensive route. It really is.
No, it is. I was someone who had to pay for all of my college on my own. And so my student loans were astronomical. And I was someone who was lucky. I booked a Broadway show about 2 years after I moved to New York City. And I made it a point to put every single cent of that towards my student loan. So I basically, I lived on nothing. I lucked into a super cheap apartment. I had a roommate. I literally lived on dollar slice pizza, dollar bagels, and dollar falafel. I had the world's worst diet, but that is basically what I ate every day. It was about $4 worth of bagels, pizza, and falafel. And I paid off, I was able to pay off most of my student debts within 1 year of my big Broadway contract. So I was super, super, super lucky. And I made the choice to live as if I were still making no money. The flip side is there was somebody in a Broadway show that I was working on who was very young, and she was cast, and it was pretty evident soon after she was cast that she wasn't going to make it and that we were going to have to let her go. We were going to have to end her contract early. And I remember, this pit of my stomach when she walked in. She walked into a rehearsal because I was rehearsing with her all the time, trying to get her to a place where we wouldn't have to let her go. And she walked in a red leather head to toe, red leather pants, red leather jacket, red leather boots, and a red leather hat. And she looked like $1 million. And I also thought, you literally spent $1 million on that outfit. And she said, I was like, wow, great outfit. She was like, I know. My friends were like, hey, you have a Broadway show now. You should spend some of that money and have some fun. And I was like, no, 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 no. And I couldn't say anything at the time, but I tried to say something to her to the effect of, that's great. Enjoy that paycheck. But, you just never know what's going to happen. And so just put some money away as well. I tried to give her this little thing like, it's a good idea to just put some of that paycheck away because you just never know what's going to happen. But the point being, student loans are no joke. And it is possible to pay them off in this field. But, I lived very sparsely during the time that I was trying to pay all that off. And I know other people who are in their 40s still paying off their student loans from school. And when I say people in their 40s, I'm talking about actors who are successful. I would deem them successful actors. They've worked contract to contract, a couple of Broadway shows peppered in there, lots of regional, some tours. They're sort of consistently a working actor, and they are still in their 40s paying off their student loans. So that's something to think about.
Yeah. I think that's a conversation to have with your family, have with yourself, really, really search about how, if you're going to have to take out loans, what is a pragmatic and reasonable way to pay them off after graduation. You really got to plan for that. Another thing we have on this list, another potential con or maybe reason to pursue a different avenue, is that 4 years is a big time investment. When we were originally writing this list, I was like, this sounds like a con, but really it's a pro. Like, you need that time to incubate. You need that time to work on your craft and blah, 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 blah. Like, 4 years is not that big of a deal. And Cynthia was like, no, I disagree. Like, I think sometimes 4 years is a long time. And sometimes I was like, let's turn this con into a pro. And Cynthia was like, no, let's just let it be what it is. So maybe you should talk about this.
It can be pro for the reasons you just said is why it is a pro. Like, you need that time to really incubate. You need that time to grow. You need that time. Some people do, 100%. There are a few people that I've seen over the years that I think either should have gone into the industry immediately. And let me talk about who those types of people are. If you are a top-notch dancer, if you are in your prime at 18, 19 years old, you might want to go ahead and give it a shot. And there's a couple reasons why. Number one is sometimes, this is not for all BFA programs, and this would be a reason to do some real shopping around, but some BFA programs don't have that much dance. So if you are a top-notch dancer and you're used to training every single day for hours a day, and then you get to your BFA program and you're now taking a 1-hour dance class each semester, 3 days a week, your skills are actually going to diminish a little bit. You're just not going to be at that high level of training that you were when you were dancing 5 hours a day, 6 days a week. Again, we're talking about a select few people, but it is something to think about, I think, for dancers. And the other type are, sometimes there's people who just slot in perfectly to those angsty teen roles right now. And if you are one of those people, you may want, I know some people who have deferred. They've done a Broadway show because they fit perfectly into that Dear Evan Hansen track, and then they go back and they get their BFA after that. But kind of knowing if you're in a position where you could actually work right now is something to think about. And I think that's a small percentage of people, but if it's you, I think it's worth considering.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think it would take a real trusted coach or mentor to like speak really honestly with you if that's you. Because again, we're talking about the exception, not the rule of
Yeah.
someone who's like, yeah, I'm 18 and I'm ready to go
Yeah.
play Zoe and Dear Evan Hansen or whatever the case may be.
And even those folks, you're gonna supplement your training. It's not like you're fully baked and you're just gonna move to New York and train. It's like you're gonna get there, you're gonna still find vocal training, you're gonna still be in dance classes, you're gonna be cobbling your training together in a little bit of a different way than being somewhere else in a cocoon for 4 years. So you're still going to need training, but it sometimes can make sense
Yeah.
to just get started in the industry right away.
Another potential con or reason not to get a BFA is different learning styles. Some people really struggle in academic settings, even though they are incredibly smart and talented. Just not everybody learns the same. So if you know that test taking and paper writing, which yes, you still have to do that even when you're going to musical theater school, if it's just not your thing, but you really thrive in voice lessons and dance classes and
Yeah.
specific acting classes, then college might not be worth the stress and money for you. You really might consider spending that money and that time on what we're going to call, quote, professional training instead. Something, yeah, of which there's a lot of options for that.
Yeah, that's the thing is you can still, if you are someone that is just hard, if high school was tough and college is going to be 10 times tougher in that academic way, and that is just not where you shine, college can be really hard. And what I've encountered a little bit at Michigan is for people like that, they will come into a voice lesson so stressed out over a different class. Like, my math class is just killing me right now. And they can't even focus on the thing they love, which they're there to train for, which is musical theater, because they are struggling so hard in their academic classes. And then you still could go to people like that. Sometimes going to a conservatory versus a college or a university can make more sense because you won't need to take some of those core classes, but you're still going to take tests. You're still going to be evaluated. You're still going to have to do things like that. And if that is just something that is going to stress you out to the point where you are struggling to learn in the way that you do thrive at, then there might be other training for you that's going to work better for you.
This is one of the reasons why we decided to put together Start Broadway Vocal Coach, our membership for professional and aspiring professional adults, performing actors, is because people need that ongoing training, whether they got a BFA or whether they didn't. We've got folks that we work with all the time from both camps, all sorts of camps, lots of different training backgrounds. And so we're able to kind of supplement and build upon that. And of course, we're working with people now who are pursuing their BFA, those college auditions, which is, gosh, a whole other episode. But yeah, there's a lot of different training that you can get, which is important to know. One last thing on this list of cons, I think, is this is just about the acting career in general, to be honest, is there's no roadmap to a performing career. There's no, like you said, entry-level job. You're gonna walk right into this job right after graduation. That doesn't exist. Other college majors might place you in an internship that leads to a long-term job offer, or train you to become a highly sought after skilled worker like a nurse or an accountant or school teacher. But unfortunately, there's just no simple roadmap to success as an actor, even if you get a musical theater degree from a, quote, top program. You are on your own after graduation, and what you choose to pursue is entirely up to you. It's like a self-guided, choose your own adventure once graduation hits. And some people thrive in that and some people don't. There's no one right path to take, and that can be incredibly difficult. So this was such a rude awakening. Like, no amount of training, no matter how good the training is, can prepare you for the realities of early morning auditions, waiting in lines, and hours of self-taping alone in your apartment. Like, that's the reality for a long time. And school is not that. School is kind of this lovely incubator bubble. And the reality of it is a little different. And nothing can quite prepare you for that until you're there.
Yep.
No solution to that.
Nope.
That's all there is. So just knowing that if that kind of self-guided career path that really must come from a place of self-motivation and putting in the work every day because you want to be doing it, not because someone else is going to tell you to do it, that's something to take a good look at and say, do I want to pour a lot of money and 4 years of a time investment into a training for this specific thing if that's not exactly what I want to do?
Yeah.
We've alluded to this already, Cynthia, but if you're considering a different path to a career in musical theater, one that doesn't include a performance degree, that really is fine too. There are plenty of examples of professional performers who went to college and studied something completely outside of the arts, like nothing related. And there's plenty of Broadway actors who didn't go to college at all. A BFA degree or any degree is not a prerequisite to becoming a Broadway actor. You've looked at a lot of resumes, you've sat behind a lot of audition tables, and can you count on one hand where you were ever like, nope, they didn't go to college to study this. Nope.
No.
Not for us.
No,
Yeah.
not once. If anything, it's sometimes, oh, wow, they have a degree in psychology.
How interesting.
That's so fascinating. Wow. Oh, wow. They've got an engineering degree. How cool. It actually is, what I've seen more than anything is things like that become a talking point, because it's like, oh, so you went to school for engineering, tell me about that. How did you get into musical theater? So sometimes that can actually be something interesting for the table to talk to you about. So there is no wrong or right path, really. It's whatever your path is meant to be is the right path.
Yeah. What we will say is a prerequisite, or at least in your very best interest, if you want to pursue this career, is to have invested in top-level training and develop great relationships. I think, you tell me if you agree, I think it boils down to training and relationships.
Yes.
Doesn't matter whether it says engineering on your college degree or musical theater, you've got to have great training and some inroads into the industry.
And build some relationships. Yep, I agree.
Yeah. And I think college BFA programs are simply the most efficient, pre-packaged route to get tons of necessary training in all of these disciplines and develop relationships with fellow actors, future directors, and lifelong friends. It's just the easiest way to go about it.
Yeah, it's all packaged there for you.
If you are thinking, if after listening to all of this, lots of pros, lots of cons, I mean, just lots of different paths to take.
Yeah, just lots of things to think about.
Lots of options.
Lots of options.
Exactly. If you're thinking after all of this that you might be interested in pursuing a BFA degree in musical theater, you are in luck. In our show notes today, we're going to link you to our free college musical theater audition getting started guide. And this fall and spring, we're having some free webinars as well, if that's a path that you're interested in taking, how to get started, what that college audition process looks like, and how to really maximize your time and your energy so that you can do that, do it well and do it efficiently. And if you're interested in professional training outside of the college path or during or after graduation, then our BBC membership is the perfect for you. We'll link you to that in our show notes as well, so you can learn a little bit more about the ongoing training and mentorship that we offer for professional and aspiring professional singing actors inside of our BBC membership. Anything you want to add today, Cynthia? What a topic. What a big one.
That's summed it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would love to hear what the listeners think, what other things they would add as pros and cons and other things to think about. Yeah.
And I think if you're thinking about pursuing this, if you're in high school or a younger person who's thinking about pursuing this, talk to other people who have graduated from programs that perhaps you have your eye on, and ask them about their experience and what their education was like and what their life looks like now as a post-grad. Thankfully, we are here for you every step of the way. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and tag us on Instagram at BWay Vocal Coach. Share this episode with a friend and consider leaving us a review. It helps more people, more listeners find us online. If something resonates with you from today's episode, we want to hear about it. DM us on Instagram or send us an email, hello@bwayvocalcoach.com. And if you're ready to get expert mentorship and ongoing training, then you're invited to join us inside the BBC membership or our college audition prep program, BBC Aspire. You can book a free consult with us. We can't wait to hear your story wherever you're at in your musical theater journey. We can't wait to help you take the next steps in your career. Thanks for listening.